They told me I had 1 month left, maybe less. The cancer had eaten through me faster than anyone expected. The doctor's words blurred together as he explained how the treatments weren't working, how I should get my affairs in order. I walked out of that hospital in a daze, the crisp winter air biting at my skin. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't even sad. I had made peace with death the moment I saw the scans. I was ready to go. Or at least, I thought I was. Because nothing in this world could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. My wife, the woman I had loved for 12 years, the one who had promised me, in sickness and in health, was already warming another man's bed before my body had even gone cold. And let me tell you something, dying doesn't hurt half as much as betrayal. I came home that night and just watched her. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. Like I wasn't counting down my last days. Like she hadn't just been given the news that her husband was dying. I studied her face. No sadness. No red-rimmed eyes from crying. Just nothing. Something inside me twisted. Maybe it was the pain meds. Maybe it was the weight of reality setting in. But something felt wrong. I told her the news, expecting, hell, hoping for some kind of reaction. She put on a good show, gasped, covered her mouth, let a few crocodile tears spill. But her eyes were dry before the first tear even hit the floor. It hit me right then. She wasn't grieving because she had already moved on. I don't know why I did it, but when she went to take a shower, I picked up her phone, and what I found, it was like getting stabbed in the gut. There they were. Texts, pictures, plans. My wife and her lover, planning weekends together, talking about how free she would be soon, how she couldn't wait to start her real life. My death was a countdown to her happiness. I sat there, phone in my hands, my entire body shaking, not from sickness, but from rage. I was dying, and my wife? She wasn't even waiting for me to be buried before she replaced me. I had 1 month left, and I'd be damned if I spent it watching that woman pretend to love me. I didn't say a word that night. I went to bed beside her, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, dreaming of the life she'd have once I was gone. But in the morning, I woke up a different man. If she wanted to move on so badly, I was going to give her a reason to regret it. I wasn't dead yet, and before I went, I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of betrayal she had fed me. I woke up before her, just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything. I wasn't the type of man to cry, never had been, but that morning, something inside me felt hollow. 12 years together. 12 years. And this is how it ends? She turned in her sleep, her bare shoulders slipping from the covers. Peaceful. So peaceful. I wanted to wake her up, to shake her, to scream in her face and ask, "How could you?" But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I pulled out my phone and started recording everything. It was too easy. Almost insulting. She wasn't even trying to hide it. The moment I left the house, hell, sometimes even while I was in the other room, she was texting him. She saved him under some fake name, Lisa, but I wasn't a fool. I watched her reflection in the mirror while she typed. Saw the way her lips curled into a smile. That used to be my smile. The one she gave me when we were young and stupid and in love. But I wasn't the fool anymore. She was. Because while she was planning her future, I was planning my revenge. I started acting weaker, letting my sickness show more than before. It wasn't hard. Cancer was already ripping through me, stealing my strength. But now, I leaned into it. "Babe," I said one night, pretending to struggle as I walked to the kitchen. "I don't think I can do this alone. I need you." She hesitated, just for a second. Then she gave me that fake, plastic smile. "Of course, honey. You're my everything." Liar. She cooked me dinner that night, sat beside me, held my hand, kissed my cheek like she wasn't betraying me behind my back. I almost admired how good she was at pretending, but I was better. The next day, I left for the hospital early, pretending I had tests, but I doubled back after an hour, and I caught them. Her and him. Some guy. Younger than me. Muscular. Cocky. The kind of man who thought he was untouchable. They were in our bed. The same sheets I had laid in the night before. I didn't make a sound, just lifted my phone and started recording. Her moans. His voice. The way they whispered about their future, about me. "Are you sure it's almost over?" the guy asked. "Yeah," she said. "He won't last the month. Then we can be together." Finally. Finally. Like I was some obstacle in her life. Like I was just a problem waiting to disappear. I let them finish. Let them bask in their sick little fantasy. Then, when they were tangled together, panting in the afterglow, I made my move. I slammed the door open. She screamed. He jumped out of bed, fumbling for his clothes like a coward. "Don't stop now," I said, my voice calm. "I was just enjoying the show." She went pale, stared at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Maybe she had. I held up my phone. "Smile for the camera, sweetheart." Her face twisted in horror. You were recording?" "Of course," I said. "You know, for memories. Gotta cherish the last days, right?" The guy puffed up his chest, trying to act tough. "Look, man, I didn't." I cut him off with a laugh. A real, gut-wrenching laugh. "Shut the hell up," I said. "You don't get to talk. You're just the backup dancer in her pathetic little play." He looked at her, expecting her to defend him, but she didn't. She just sat there, trembling, realizing exactly how screwed she was. I walked over to the dresser, pulled out the folder I had prepared. Divorce papers. Signed, dated, everything ready to go. I slapped them on the bed. "Congratulations," I said. "You're free. Isn't that what you wanted?" She blinked. What? "I know everything," I said. "The texts, the plans, the little vacation you had planned once I was dead." "Cute, really." She shook her head. No, it's not." "Don't." My voice dropped to something cold, deadly. "You don't get to lie anymore." She swallowed hard, eyes darting to the papers. I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "I may be dying," I said, "but I'm not going to die a fool." I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Because after I walked out of that house, I sent that video to everyone. Her parents, her friends, her job. By the time she called me, screaming and sobbing, it was already too late. Her perfect little world? Shattered. And me? I might have been dying. But for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. I left her there, sitting in that bed where she betrayed me, clutching the divorce papers like they were some kind of lifeline. But there was no saving her. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already blowing up. Her. I let it ring. Again. And again. Then the messages started. "Please, let's talk. It's not what you think. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." "Fix this?" I laughed. Laughed so hard I almost forgot I was dying. She wasn't crying because she lost me. She was crying because I beat her to the punch. I went to a bar. Ordered a drink. Probably shouldn't have. Alcohol wasn't exactly doctor recommended when you had weeks left. But I didn't care. Some old song was playing in the background. Something about heartbreak and whiskey. Fitting. I took a sip. Let it burn. A part of me wanted to feel something. Grief? Anger? Regret? But all I felt was relief. She was gone. The weight of her betrayal? Gone. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a dying man. I felt like a man with nothing left to lose. I was halfway through my second drink when a familiar voice pulled me from my thoughts. Jesus Christ. I turned. It was her father. Now, Let me tell you something about this man. He wasn't the kind of guy to get involved in drama. Old school, hands off, always let his daughter handle her own mistakes. But the look in his eyes? Pure disappointment. He slid into the seat across from me, let out a long sigh. I saw the video, he said. I didn't say anything. Just took another sip. I won't defend her, he added. She deserves everything coming to her. That surprised me. I expected him to come here, tell me to take the video down, to stop ruining her life. But instead, he just shook his head, staring at the scratched-up bar counter. I raised her better than that, he muttered. For a moment, I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. Then I remembered what she did. So I leaned back, crossed my arms, and said, "Guess you didn't." He exhaled sharply. "Guess not." We sat there in silence for a while. Two men who had both lost something. Then he pulled out his wallet, tossed a few bills on the counter. "This one's on me," he said, standing up. I raised my glass in mock gratitude. Then, just as he turned to leave, he said something that stuck with me. "She's going to regret this for the rest of her life," he murmured. "But you? You don't have time to waste on regret." Then he was gone. I went home that night and finally picked up one of her calls. She was sobbing. I could hear it the moment I answered. "Why are you doing this?" she choked out. I smirked. "You mean, why am I not rolling over and dying like you expected?" "That's not fair," she whimpered. "Neither is screwing another guy while your husband is fighting for his life." Silence. I could hear her trying to come up with some excuse, some pathetic lie that would make it all better. But I didn't let her. "I sent the papers," I said. "Sign them. Can't we at least talk?" "Talk?" I let out a hollow laugh. "What's left to talk about, sweetheart? How you couldn't even wait until I was in the ground before moving on." More silence. Then, barely above a whisper, "I didn't think you'd find out." There it was. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I made a mistake." She just didn't like getting caught. I shook my head. "You'll sign those papers, or I'll make sure the whole world sees exactly what kind of woman you are." I heard her suck in a breath, heard the sharp click as she hung up on me. Good. Let her stew in it. Let her feel even a fraction of the humiliation she had put me through. Because I was done feeling like the victim. The next week, I started living. I spent time with my friends. Took a trip out of town, just for the hell of it. Did things I had put off for years. And her? She was falling apart. I saw it through mutual friends, heard it in whispers. Her boss put her on leave because of the scandal. Her lover didn't stick around. Turns out, a guy who sleeps with a dying man's wife isn't exactly husband material. And the best part? Her parents cut her off. Her father called me up, told me they were done with her, that they couldn't even look at her without feeling ashamed. She was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And I had never felt more at peace. One night, as I sat on my porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, my phone rang again. Her. I debated ignoring it, letting her twist in the wind, but I was feeling generous. So I picked up. She didn't speak at first, just soft breathing, like she was trying to work up the courage to say something. Finally, "Do you still hate me?" I stared out at the darkening sky, at the stars blinking into existence. Then I said the most honest thing I had said in weeks. "No," I murmured. "I don't hate you." She sucked in a sharp breath, like she thought that meant there was still hope. But then I smiled. "I just don't care about you anymore." And with that, I hung up. Let her sit with that. Let her drown in it. Because my time was almost up. And I wasn't going to waste a second more on a woman who had never deserved me in the first place. I hung up that call, set my phone down, and took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, maybe even years, I felt free. Not from the cancer. That was still inside me, eating away at whatever time I had left. But from her. She wasn't my wife anymore. She wasn't anything to me. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. The next few weeks went by in a blur. I spent time with the people who actually mattered. Friends I hadn't seen in years. My brother and his kids. Even some old co-workers who reached out after seeing the video. Turns out, people actually cared about me. And that was something she never understood. She thought once I was gone, I'd be forgotten. Just a tombstone in a cemetery. But me? I left my mark. And she was the one fading into nothing. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. It was short. "I'm sorry. Please, can we talk?" I knew who it was. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, just to see how deep the rabbit hole went, I responded. "Why?" Her reply came fast. "I just need to explain." Explain? Explain what? That she had been planning my funeral while she was in bed with another man? That she didn't think I'd be strong enough to fight back? I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even interested in what she had to say. But I was curious about just how pathetic she had become. So I agreed. We met at a park. It was the same place we used to go when we first started dating. Back then, we'd sit on the grass, talk about the future, dream about a life together. Funny how life works, huh? She was already sitting on a bench when I arrived. She looked different. Not in a way that made me feel anything, just less. Less confident. Less put together. Like the world had finally chewed her up and spit her out. Good. She looked up, eyes puffy, like she had been crying all day. Not my problem. I stood in front of her, hands in my pockets. "Talk." She swallowed hard. I don't even know where to start." I said nothing. She shifted, twisting her fingers in her lap. "I was scared," she finally whispered. "You were dying, and I didn't know how to handle it. I felt like I was losing everything, and I made a mistake." I scoffed. "A mistake?" I repeated. "A mistake is forgetting to turn off the stove. You made a choice." She flinched. I sat down beside her, but not close. I wanted her to feel that distance. "You weren't scared," I continued. "You were excited. I read the texts. You couldn't wait for me to die. You wanted me gone so you could start your real life." She opened her mouth to protest, but then she stopped, because she knew. She knew I was right. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time, I didn't feel a single ounce of sympathy. She wiped her face, exhaling shakily. "I regret it," she whispered. "Every single second. I lost everything. My job, my family, my friends, you." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then, in the calmest voice possible, I said, "Good." She sucked in a sharp breath. "I hope you regret it every day for the rest of your life," I said. "Because I don't." Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, confused. I leaned back, looking at the sky. "You didn't ruin my life," I said. "You freed me. If you hadn't betrayed me, I would have spent my last days thinking you actually loved me. But now?" I turned to face her. "I know the truth. And the truth is, you never deserved me." She opened her mouth, but what could she even say? There was no apology big enough, no excuse strong enough. So instead, she just sat there. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw it. Regret. Not because she lost me, but because I didn't care anymore. She wanted me to hate her, to scream, to cry, to make this about her redemption. But I was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But in every way that mattered. She had lost me a long time ago. I stood up. "We're done here." She grabbed my hand. For the first time in weeks, maybe months. And it meant nothing. I pulled away. She stared at me, lips trembling, voice small. "Will you ever forgive me?" I thought about it. Then I smiled. "No." And I walked away. I never saw her again after that. She signed the divorce papers. Quietly. Without a fight. Probably too embarrassed to drag this out any longer. A few weeks later, I got an email from her father. He just said one thing. She's miserable. Thought you should know. And I smiled. Because that was justice. So now I wait. The end is close. I feel it every morning, every night. The sickness, the exhaustion. But you know what? I'm not scared. I'm at peace. Because I didn't die a fool. And she has to live with her betrayal for the rest of her miserable life. And that's better than revenge. That's karma.